Fantastic. I see you are excited. So I wish you the best of luck and stay assured that our audience is the most welcoming and the most supportive.
Thank you. Okay. So today's session is about using data to drive e-learning results. And we'll talk about how to leverage analytics to improve learning outcomes. So my name is Marina Arshavskiy. I'm an instructional designer, an e-learning consultant, author, and a professional e-learning writer. I have more than 15 years of experience. My credentials include Masters of Arts in Instructional Systems Design. I'm also Kirkpatrick's Bronze Level Certified Training and Evaluation Professional. I've been conferred with the Top 100 Leaders in Education Award. I'm the author of the Instructional Design for E-Learning book, and then I'm also an author of some other books, including the Agile E-Learning Development, and the creator of the Instructional Design for E-Learning program, which is based on my book. So you're in the right place if you're interested in improving e-learning outcomes through data-driven strategies. If you want to learn about types of data you should be collecting and analyzing from your courses, if you're looking for best practices to leverage data to improve learning outcomes, and if you're curious about how data can help you make more informed decisions about your e-learning programs. So I'd like to know how many of you have ever used data to make decisions for your e-learning courses? Have you ever made data-driven decisions? Do you use data in your courses? And if so, how do you use it?
I think, Marina, we need to give our participants just a little bit of time so that the streaming hits the point, and then we'll only be able to see their answers within 30 seconds or so. And I guess it's just very important for us to learn their opinion. But maybe while we are waiting, you could just make a couple of examples on how could that be using data to make a decision for the e-learning course? Just maybe a couple of very simple examples for those who are very new to e-learning. Some of our participants are like super fresh.
Got it. So we'll talk about it in today's presentation for sure, but some examples definitely include quizzes and actually asking questions, gathering information through surveys. Then also you want to look at your analytics through like Google Analytics and other tools that actually allow you to collect data for your course, as well as some social data. And also the tools that you use will help you collect data, like LMS definitely collects data for you as well. And we'll definitely get into data and what data you need to collect as we go through that, through today's presentation. I'll definitely give you lots of examples.
Perfect. Of course, I didn't doubt that. Just wanted to make sure that even the new to the industry would also be able to answer that question in a more the question would be more understandable to them. So I'd say 100% of our answers are yes in this or that form. Somebody, for example, Christian, tracks training data in SharePoint lists, surveys, and also uses iSpring quiz results. Tawny says that they use mostly feedback from courses to drive change in course design and delivery. And Ton also answers finding out if there are high miss questions on a quiz, etc. So we've got lots of questions which confirm that our participants today do use data to make decisions for their e-learning courses.
Thank you. That's good. That's good to know. And hopefully you'll learn something new today too, because I'll share how I use data in my courses and how I recommend using data to collect e-learning, to collect data for your e-learning courses. So hopefully you'll learn something new today as well. So first, let's talk about why data is important. So simply put, data allows you to measure the effectiveness of your e-learning programs and courses. Without data, you're essentially flying blind. You can't know whether your learners are actually learning, and you can't make data-driven decisions, as we just saw. So you won't be able to really improve your programs. So for example, imagine you have an e-learning program on customer service for a company's call center, let's say. So if you don't collect data on how well learners are retaining the information, applying it, in their work, you won't really know whether the program is actually effective. By collecting data on completion rates, quiz scores, and on the job performance metrics, you can easily determine how well the program is working and then make data-driven decisions to improve it. Okay. So types of data you should be collecting. Well, there are several key types of data that you should be collecting. So let's talk about each one. So first, we'll start with learner data. We'll talk about completion rate, quiz scores, time spent on each module. So completion rates, that basically measures how many learners actually complete your course or your e-learning program. The quiz scores measure how well learners understand the content. And then the time spent on each module, that measures how engaged your learners are with the material. So for engagement data, you want to look at click-through rates, time spent on each page. You also want to look at interactions with multimedia elements. So for click-through rates, that measures how often learners actually click on links or buttons within the e-learning program or course. For time spent on each page, you want to measure how long learners actually spend on each page. And then for interactions with multimedia elements, you really want to see and measure how often learners are actually engaging with your videos, with your images, and then other elements. For performance data, that measures basically on the job performance metrics and then also customer satisfaction scores. So here we're basically talking about levels 3 and 4 evaluations. So you basically for the on the job performance, you're measuring how well learners are applying their knowledge in real world situations. And for customer satisfaction scores, you're measuring how well learners actually understand the content and how can they actually apply it to their customers' needs. How can they use it in real life again? So once you've collected data, you have to analyze and interpret it. So to make data-driven decisions. And so let's talk about some strategies that you can do so use dashboards in different like you have to visualize your data to see the trends and patterns. That's very important. That's a critical component of it. That actually helps you to quickly and easily see trends and patterns. So, for example, you can use a bar chart to visualize quiz scores and see how many learners are scoring above or below certain threshold. Then you also want to start looking for outliers or anomalies that may indicate a problem. For example, if a lot of learners are actually dropping out of your course or program after a certain module, then there might be a problem with that module. So you might want to look at it from the perspective of content, organization, and all the other instructional designs. You also want to use statistical techniques to identify correlations and relationships between different types of data. So, for example, you can use regression analysis to see if there is a relationship between completion rates and quiz scores. So, let's say your learners don't do well on quizzes, and then they essentially drop out. So is there a relationship between that, or do they usually continue? So you want to know that as well. And the last one I want to talk about is soliciting feedback from learners and other stakeholders to gain additional insights. So for example, you can conduct surveys to gather feedback on the program and use that feedback to make improvements. And I'll talk about surveys a little bit more in more detail, but it's important to be, in my opinion, to be careful with surveys because sometimes they don't provide accurate data as some learners don't like to complete them and they just basically mark anything that without even reading it, or sometimes they don't understand the question. So be careful with surveys. That's what I wanted to say. Um, Now let's talk about tools for gathering the information. There are many, many different tools, and today I'll talk about just five of them. So the first one I want to talk about is the learning management system or LMSs, right? So when it comes to collecting data for e-learning analytics, there are many different tools. So e-learning management system is just one of them. And that's actually the most common one that most e-learning professionals use. So LMSs are basically, as you probably know, are software applications that provide centralized platform for managing and delivering e-learning content. They're the most common tool used for collecting e-learning data, and they can actually provide a lot of very useful information on learners' behavior, their performance. So masses can track a variety of metrics. They can track completion rates, time spent on each activity. They can give you quiz scores, learner feedback, and they can also track the progress of each learner and identify areas where learners are struggling, which is also important. But they're also learning experience platform or LXPs. So they're relatively new tools in e-learning, but they're actually very, very useful. And they're designed to provide personalized learning experience. They can collect data on learner behavior and use information to provide customized content recommendations on learning tasks. And personalization is huge in e-learning now. So LXPs can collect data on learners' preferences, performance preferences. They can also give you like information on content that they prefer, even the time of the day that they prefer to learn. So you can get a variety of very personalized information, and you can use to create a more tailored learning experience for your learners. Survey tools, they can be valuable for collecting feedback from learners. There are many different tools that you can use. You can even do like very simple so you can use simple tools like Google Forms. You can use SurveyMonkey. You can use surveys. Like even inside the iSpring, there are amazing surveys that you can use. But to be completely honest, I'm not a big fan of surveys because, like I said before, they don't give you a complete picture and they're not always dating. So I don't rely on them personally. But they can be used to collect feedback on the course content, delivery, and assessment. They can also be used to gather demographic information learners, which can help you identify patterns and trends in learner behavior. But again, I don't recommend relying on them. Then you have social media analytics tools. Social media analytics tools can be used to track how learners are discussing the course content on social media platforms. So nowadays, a lot of courses have the social media component, Facebook group or things like that. So I recommend actually when if you have a Facebook group, looking reading through your group and looking at feedback and just seeing how people are finding your course. What are they saying inside this tool? So there is a little bit of manual work, but it can give you a lot of good analytics and good results too. And also the social media tools can provide insights into how learners are actually engaged with the material, what topics they're finding most interesting, and what challenges they're actually facing with your course. And lastly, the web analytics tools. So these tools can be used to track how learners are interacting with course material outside of the learning management system. So, for example, you can track how learners navigate the course website, how long they actually spend on each page, and then what actions they take, such as downloading a PDF or maybe clicking on links. So this can also give you a lot of information when you're trying to change or modify things in your course. So once you've analyzed and interpreted your data, it's time for you to make data-driven decisions. I'll talk about just some ways that you can do that. So you can identify areas where learners are struggling and make improvements in those areas, obviously. So, for example, the quiz scores are consistently low for a particular module. You may then revise that module to make it more effective. Um, it's possible that the quiz scores demonstrate that the module needs to be revised, or sometimes you need to take a look at your actual quiz and see if the questions need to be improved or rewritten, or maybe there is something that's really wrong with the quiz. So don't always assume that if the quiz scores are low, that the content is bad. So you can look at these two variables. And then make decisions about what content to include in future e-learning programs based on what has been successful in the past. So, for example, let's say the learners always rate a particular module or lesson very highly. So maybe next time when you actually update the program, you really review that module again and you make sure that you incorporate similar content in your future programs, or you really like try to encourage other instructional designers to create similar modules and incorporate similar things. So that metric can also be very important for you to track. And then making decisions about how to allocate resources based on what is most effective. So, for example, let's say if the learners are spending significantly more time on one module, and then you may want to maybe invest more resources into that particular module to make it even more effective. Or at the same time, you also want to look at that module and see why is it so effective and how can you make your other modules just as effective. It's not always the topic. It can be the way you present it, or it can be the way you create your interactivity within that module. So that metric can also tell you a lot. So, and here's some examples of how data can be used to drive e-learning results. So if you notice that, let's say, a large percentage of learners are dropping out of a particular course or lesson, you can then analyze the data and determine where they're dropping out and why. So that why is actually very important because it will help you improve your content a lot. And this can also help you make changes to the course structure or content. And you can also improve your learners' engagement and retention by that. So let's say you're using a gamified approach to e-learning. So in that case, you can use data to track how learners are progressing through the game and identify areas where they may be struggling with them. And this can also help you make adjustments to the game design and make it more effective. If you're using video-based content, similarly, you can also use data to track how many learners are actually watching your videos and also for how long they're watching them. If they just start watching your video and then they just drop out, then maybe next time you won't include a video or you won't even invest your resources into creating. And this can also help you determine whether the videos are conveying the information and if they're effective at conveying the information and if they need to be revised or replaced. So at what point are the learners dropping and why? That's another important thing to consider. And if you're using
Marina, would you apologize me if I interrupt you for just a second? I'm so very sorry, but I believe that it could be explainable and it could be a good excuse for me because I feel that there is a very heated discussion in the chat about the surveys. Would you be all right if I ask you a couple of questions about that right now before Q&A?
definitely.
Yeah,
Yes,
because I think
definitely.
we might move on
Yes,
further on. Yeah,
of
thank you
course.
so much. I see that the participants are very curious about those surveys, and Alicia was mentioning that uh, she finds surveys lacking sometimes. So, what do you use to fill in the gaps? And Michael was also commenting extensively on that. So, I would really love to hear your opinion on that.
Like I said, I feel like surveys are important because you can get some data from it, but I don't necessarily use them all the time. And like I mentioned before, I don't believe that a lot of learners actually like to fill out the surveys. And I feel like a lot of learners, they just basically do it just to get it done and over with, and they don't really pay a lot of attention to what they put in the survey. So instead of surveying my audience, I like to do some other things. For example, I prefer direct observations instead. I prefer asking interview questions in an interview format. So sometimes after gathering data from my survey, I would simply go and continue with interviewing the learners. I also like to interview supervisors whenever possible. And again, it's not always possible, it's not always an option. But for me, it's very important to track not only like whether they like the course, whether they enjoyed the content, but I need to know if they learned something from it. Because if it's just fun and engaging, it's one thing. But if they're not learning anything, that's the other thing, and that's what my goal. That's what's important to me. So I like to talk to supervisors. I really make it a point to uh, survey supervisors more than learners sometimes. Sometimes I feel like it's more important and ask them how their learners are actually applying what they learned to the job and whether they're actually seeing any improvements. And then I also like to interview my people, and I don't particularly like focus groups because it's just like with surveys. I feel like learners won't always tell you the truth. They'll be shy and maybe they won't feel comfortable in front of other people. So I really prefer one-on-one interviews instead.
Exactly. Yeah. And it definitely gives us a chance to get a more in-depth information. Yeah.
Mhm.
All right. Thank you, Marina. I see lots of participants are, there were lots of comments on that. So I felt that this was helpful. And I see Michael agrees with you on that, saying that surveys are not the only data collecting strategies. So I say we can continue from there on. And if there are any other burning questions, I will use the privilege of interrupting you.
Sounds good. Thank you. Okay, so I think we talked about assessments. So again, if you're using assessments in your e-learning program, you can use the data to track learner performance on the assessments and identify areas where they're struggling, right? So this can really help you make changes to the content or the actual structure of the assessment and make it more effective at measuring learning out. So for me, honestly, measuring assessments sometimes is a very good indicator of how well the program was structured and really how the learners understood the material and whether they'll be able to apply. That's why to make my assessments as scenario based as possible and whenever possible, instead of just doing random multiple choice questions um, and having them just recall the information. And also, if you're using like social learning features that we discussed, which is actually becoming very popular right now, you can use data to track how learners are engaging with your platform and with each other too. And this can help you identify which features are more effective at promoting learning and engagement, and which may need to be revised and replaced a little. So sometimes this is really a good indicator in you as well. So look at their social data too. Okay. So let's just quickly go through what we already talked about, just summarize things a little bit. So to summarize, what are some best practices that I highly recommend you actually use to improve your learning outcomes? You want to collect data regularly and consistently. This will allow you to track progress over time and make adjustments as needed. You also want to use a learning management system or an LMS or other e-learning software that can help you collect and analyze data. You want to use data to inform your decisions, but you need to rely on other sources of information, such as feedback from learners and instructors. And the more personalized feedback you can get, one-on-one feedback, the better. And don't get bogged down in the details. Focus on key metrics that are most relevant to your learning goals. So we'll talk about establishing learning goals in a little bit, but for me, I always establish my goals first, and then based on my goals, I actually decide what metrics to collect. Because there is like a ton of key metrics that can be collected, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's always appropriate to the particular topic that you're covering in your course or to your particular goal. You also want to use data to continuously improve your e-learning programs, but don't be afraid to make changes and try new things based on what data is telling you, because this is basically you're making data informed decisions here. You're not just randomly doing something or making any changes that you feel are necessary. Whenever it's a data driven decision, typically it will really help you improve your course or the program. So when it comes to e-learning analytics, there are certain best practices that can help you ensure that you're using data effectively to improve your learning outcomes. And these best practices include, like we just talked about, setting clear goals and objectives, choosing relevant metrics, and regularly evaluating and updating your strategy, your analysis. So the first step in any effective e-learning analytics strategy is, like I said, setting clear and objectives. So what do you hope to achieve through your e-learning program, of course? Are you looking to improve completion rates, increase engagement, boost learner satisfaction, teach something specific? What is it that you're looking to do? By setting clear goals and expectations and objectives, you can better focus on analytics efforts and ensure that you're collecting the data that is most relevant to your needs and to your learners' needs as well. And it's also important to communicate these goals and objectives to all stakeholders that are involved in the program. So it's not just between you and the developer who is helping you, who is working with you. It's also important to ensure that the learners also understand the goals, and the trainers and anyone else who's involved in your course or project. And then once you have your clear goals and objectives in place, the next step is to choose relevant metrics, like you said, like we've already talked about, because you want to measure progress towards your goals. And there are a variety of metrics that can be tracked in e-learning, including, like we already talked about, completion rates, we talked about time spent on each activity, quiz scores, what else? Learner feedback. It can be just about anything. But you need to make sure that the metric you choose is measurable and actionable. That's very important. Measuring that the data that you're collecting, if it's not measurable and actionable, then it's useless and there is no point in collecting it. And regularly evaluating and updating the analytics strategy is also very important, because you want to ensure that it remains effective over time. And this may involve actually reviewing the metrics you've tracked and making adjustments as needed. Or maybe sometimes you need to explore new tools and techniques for gathering data. So sometimes, you need to gather data for particular on a particular topic or particular course, or maybe something particular key metric that you need. And you just notice that your old strategy didn't work, then you need to come up with tools that will help you evaluate the metric that you really need. But never track something that really doesn't give you the data that you need, that doesn't answer your objective. And as I already mentioned, and I'll mention this again, you always want to involve your stakeholders in the evaluation and the updating process, including learners, trainers, other instructional designers, anybody who's involved in the course. You really want to make sure that they know what type of data you've collected, what were the findings, and how you plan to implement. That's a crucial part. I'll share some interesting case studies. Large companies that actually use data and make data-driven decisions all the time. So the first one I wanted to talk about is a case study in IBM, which they use the personalized learning pathways. So IBM uses e-learning analytics to personalize their learning pathways for the employees. So the company analyzed data on employee learning behaviors and preferences, and they created personalized training plan for each employee. As a result, employees were able to complete training more quickly and effectively, which resulted in 50% reduction in training time and a 45% increase in employee productivity, which is huge. So the lesson learned here is that by using e-learning analytics to personalize training plans, companies can truly improve employee engagement and outcomes. And of course, as a result, the employee will perform better and the company will have better results as well. And like I mentioned at the very beginning, personalized e-learning it's a very, very hot topic right now in e-learning. All companies are trying to make their e-learning as personalized as possible. Everyone is talking about it. So, and data is basically the number one thing that can help you do that. The next case study I wanted to talk about is Duolingo. And they use adaptive learning. So Duolingo is a language learning app which uses e-learning analytics to provide adaptive learning experiences for users. This app actually tracks user progress and adjusts the difficulty of lessons accordingly, ensuring that users are challenged without feeling overwhelmed. And this approach has helped them achieve a 300% increase in user engagement and a 17% increase in user retention. And again, here you can see the note of personalization. They're really looking at personalizing each learner's approach to learning, and they're giving each learner their individual plan. So the lesson learned here is that, again, by using e-learning analytics to provide adaptive learning experiences, companies can improve user engagement and retention. And so you want to use adaptive learning together with personalized learning. And the last case study I wanted to share with you today is the one in Ohio State University. They have the early warning system. So Ohio University used e-learning analytics to develop an early warning system for their at-risk students. So they analyzed data on student behavior and performance and identified students who were really struggling to provide them with targeted support. And as a result, the university saw a 30% increase in student retention and a 17% increase in graduation rates. And this is the university, but this can actually be used in companies as well, where companies can help their employees leverage with their learning and during the training course. And if they're finding that people are struggling with completing their training, they can always just step in and help their at-risk employees that way. So data can really help there as well. So it's not just the universities. And the lesson learned here is that by using e-learning analytics to identify at-risk students and provide targeted support, universities can improve student retention and graduation rates. And like I said, it's not just for universities or colleges. This also applies to people in general, to companies, because they can really help to improve their employee retention, and they can help their employees improve at what they do at work. And as a result, the outcomes, the results will be much better, much more significant. So these examples actually demonstrate the power of e-learning analytics to improve learning outcomes, engagement, and retention. And the lessons learned from these success stories include the importance of personalization. We already talked about it many times. This is crucial right now. Adaptive learning, which is also part of it, and providing targeted support to learners or employees of the organization. Um, so companies and universities that implement e-learning analytics, strategists they basically use strategies and different principles to do that. But collecting data and big data, that plays a really, really important role. And you can really see positive results when you're actually applying it and taking time to really evaluate your data. Let me take a moment. We already talked about many of this, but let me just take a moment and talk a little bit about the future of e-learning. So, e-learning analytics is an evolving field. So, there are trends, there are emerging technologies that help you constantly collect new data, but that's an ever-emerging field. So, there is no end to it. The trends and technologies have the potential to really revolutionize the way we actually use data and improve learning. And then, as the amount of data generated by e-learning programs continue to grow, companies and universities are really turning to big data technologies to make sense out of that data and help organizations progress and analyze large amounts of data quickly and effectively. So obviously, you do need to use tools and technology for that. You cannot always do everything manually, although there are some things that have to be done manually to get the best result. So there is also, predictive analytics. And that predictive analytics involves using historical data to make predictions about future outcomes. In e-learning, predictive analytics can be used to identify at-risk learners and provide targeted support before they actually fall behind. And then we already talked about, and then there is also LXP. So we already talked about LXP's learning experience platforms. They're emerging as a popular alternative to traditional learning management systems. So LXPs are really going to, at one point, they're going to replace LMSs. They're artificial intelligence and machine learning. They basically use AI to deliver personalized learning experiences to each learner, and they can track learner behavior and performance and provide you insights into their progress, which is, again, a huge thing in data right now. And AI has the potential to really improve e-learning analytics by providing more accurate and actionable insights. So without AI, you probably won't be able to get as many accurate details and collect data in such an accurate way and get as many actionable insights as you would with AI. Especially when it comes to learner behavior and performance. Because AI-powered analytics tools can identify patterns in data that people can simply miss and can provide personalized recommendations for each. So as you can see, personalization is everywhere. That's crucial. And then there's always a blockchain. There's also a blockchain. By using blockchain, learners can really maintain control over their data and decide who has access to it. And this can help address concerns around data privacy and security in e-learning, although it's still being discussed as some managers want to see all data and they need to be able to really have access to all the results, all the training results of their employees. So this is still work in progress, and that's the question that's being discussed in many companies right now. Again, as you can see, I have increased personalization here. So e-learning is becoming more and more personalized. Learners want to receive personalized recommendations. They no longer like to take courses that are designed for everyone. They want courses that are customized just for them, and they want to receive support that's based on their unique learning preferences. Greater integration, e-learning analytics will become more tightly integrated with other learning technologies such as learning experience platforms, virtual reality. And this integration will enable more seamless data collection and analysis across multiple learning platforms. And emphasis on soft skills was the last one I wanted to talk about. As the importance of soft skills in the workplace continues to grow, e-learning analytics will focus more on assessing and developing these skills. So this may involve using natural language processing, sentiment analysis. Sentiment analysis is a big one because it will actually help you figure out how your learners feel about the course, analyze learner communication skills, or also using virtual reality or to simulate real world scenarios where soft skills are required. That data will also help you predict that and how their soft skills and how their sentiments play a role in the results of the course. Because sometimes if they feel uncomfortable about the course, if they don't like it, then the results will be lower. And at that point, you want to gather more data and see what caused them to have that type of sentiment about the course. So in my instructional design for e-learning program, I actually talk about evaluation and e-learning and all the data stuff. So I talk about the all these things that we just covered and more. So the program includes theory, exercises, quizzes, templates, case studies, checklists. And basically, there are 4 parts to the program. The first part covers all the major principles of instructional design, and the second part is all about designing instructional sound e-learning courses. So there you learn about the needs analysis, learning objective, Bloom's taxonomy, Gagne's 9 events, how to create a design document, how to storyboard, write scripts, how to prototype. We also talk about LMSs, SCORM, reusable learning objects, Section 508 compliance, and of course, evaluation, big data assessments, providing corrective feedback to your learners too. And the third part is about creating interactive e-learning, covers games, simulations, storytelling, scenario-based learning, authoring tools, video, audio, graphics, and e-learning. And the last part is mostly for advanced topics, such as how to work with subject matter experts, how to manage your e-learning projects, m-learning, podcasting, social learning. So, like I said, there are 4 parts. So, if you're interested in joining the program, I'm offering a 50% discount to everyone who participated. And your code is iSpring 2023. And you'll get a 50% discount. So from $197.99, it will take it down to $98.99. Okay, and let me know if you have any questions about today's presentation or if you want to discuss anything.
Sure. Thank you very much, Marina. I think this was extremely comprehensive. And I guess the fact that we don't have that many questions probably means that you've just covered most of the details that could be an issue for our audience. However, there are some, and I'd like to ask them. So let's begin with the first one in the chronological order. We'll go through and hear the question of Ken. Ken asks, don't you think that creating adaptive learning like Duolingo would be very expensive in terms of time and money?
That is true. Creating a data-driven learning is always expensive. So yes, you're correct. So if you're on a budget and you're just looking to create e-learning that is basically flipped through, and then data-driven learning probably won't work here. You can always make some adjustments. For example, you can just maybe slightly change your content to match what learners are looking for. But personalized learning and adaptive learning requires a lot more investment and a lot more resources. That is completely true.
Right. All right. Thank you, Marina. I would love to also hear any other questions if you guys have them. Feel free to ask. We still have about 10 minutes or so for a Q&A. But while we are waiting for some other comments and questions, or maybe just your supportive comments, that would also be very nice to hear. If you agree with Marina on the points that she has presented, it would be lovely to hear your opinion. I would love to ask one more question, which was on my mind throughout all your presentation, Marina. And this is something I'm sure other people are also keeping in mind. So I understand that this data-driven insights are extremely helpful in terms of increasing efficiency of online courses. And this is just silly not to use this opportunity when the technology has given us the gift of, this data analyzed and collected in a very nice and clean fashion. As you said, the AI provides for a more meaningful data for us in a very nicely created manner, in a very nicely collected manner. But I'm concerned about those potential privacy issues. So I wonder if collecting and using learners' data goes against the privacy concerns, or maybe you could just make a short comment on that.
Each company has their own rules about privacy and security of their employees. So, and then also it depends on the department and the supervisor and the training. So there are certain types of trainings that employees need to complete they're just mandatory compliance trainings. And these training courses may or may not, come with certain privacy, rules. So there are also courses that they must complete as part of their job so that they can, maybe change positions or move to managerial positions, something like that. And in that case, most companies actually want to see their test results and how well they perform. And they also want to see how well they're actually moving through the course. Also, it depends on the company. For example, if you're talking about government agencies, they have much stricter policies on privacy and security of their employees. And certain private companies, they're more open. So each company has their own legal department and they have their contracts in place. So it's really hard to say, as it all depends on the company. But yeah, there are potentially definitely concerns about privacy and security. but companies need to really take some time to address those if they decide to step into AI and all this data-driven world. I cannot hear you. I think you're on mute.
I apologize. Exactly. Yes. I was just very taken away by your answer, was very attentively listening, and forgot to switch on my mic. I apologize. So I wanted to just say that I have some agreement in the chat that it's been really a comprehensive presentation. People love it. Thanks, Isaac, for your comment. And also Abigail confirmed that she finds this question very relevant about those privacy concerns, including the issues of performance reviews. So she says that the same issue. Anyway, regardless, I'd like to proceed and ask you one more question, Marina. I think it's going to be something, again, people might find helpful. I'd like to ask you about those learning metrics that we started with in the very commencing of the presentation. So you said that it's important to track those learning metrics, but I wanted to clarify, which learning metrics do you find important to track? Like, how do you determine which learning metrics are important to track for me specifically in my company, for example?
So each course will actually require its own metrics. So it depends what is it that you're trying to test. So your metrics will really be linked to your objectives of the course. So typically, I track learners' engagement because I want to see how engaged they are. I also track whether they're actually understanding the material through questions, and but everything else will depend, because some courses that you design, you will really need to know whether they can get a certain score, and how did they get to that certain score. So you will be tracking that. For other courses, they don't really need to get a particular score, but you just want them to understand the general content, and you want them to, let's say, improve their behavior or their attitude towards something. So in that case, you will not be tracking their score, but you will be testing how well they understand the scenarios presented in the course and how they can apply it. In other instances, you won't be able to track anything inside the course, but maybe you'll be able to track data after you speak to their supervisor, and you'll be able to talk to them and see how they improved on the job. So you need that data because you're looking for on the job improvement. In other cases, you simply want them to go through the course and ensure that it's really personalized to them, because they had particular problems with their performance on the job performance, and you want these problems to be addressed. So in that case, you'll be particularly looking for these performance issues. So there is no right or wrong answer here. There is no specific metrics that you'll be tracking for each of your courses. But you do want to look at the quizzes, when they're dropping, the dropout rate. Are they really completing the courses? When are they dropping out? If they're not doing well on quizzes, you want to go back and see why they're not doing well on quizzes. Is it because your content was constructed in a way that's not comprehensible, or is it because they just don't understand the material? And then you need to look at how else you can present it. So it all depends, again, on your course. There is no one answer, but like I said, I highly recommend looking at your goals and objectives and then creating your metrics based on these goals and objectives.
Well, yeah, that makes sense. Instead of just measuring and collecting data for the sake of measuring and collecting data, you might want to link them to your original goals, indeed.
Right.
All right, Marina, I think this was just the right time for us to wrap it up, because I believe we will be slowly moving towards a break in our next session. So I really appreciate everything that you've shared with us today. I found that the participants, our attendees, also found it very helpful according to their comments. So many thanks for being with us today, and again, investing your time into developing our iSpring community. I do believe that this is all for the sake of sharing information, exchanging knowledge, and your input is very valuable for us. So thanks a lot. And I hope that you'll be able to stay with us for the rest of the presentations.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me, and thank you for participating, for joining me today. This was really, I really enjoyed the presentation. I love talking about data, to be honest. I find it very valuable. And if you ever have any questions, don't hesitate to contact me. My email is here. It's marina@yourelearningworld.com. So feel free to send me an email and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. And thank you again. And I wish you all e-learning and instructional design success.
Yay! Thank you, Marina. All right.
Thank
Would
you.
say bye-bye to Marina, not farewell, because I hope she stays with us for the rest of our session.